This happened to me when I was walking on my college campus several years ago. I passed by a man who had very striking eyes. He was dark-skinned, but his eyes were bright green, which is a little unusual on its own. But then I also noticed that his pupils were vertical slits, like a feline or reptilian eye. And that's the whole story. I lost him in the crowd and I didn't follow after him because I had to get to class, but I still remember his very odd eyes. They had a bit of a gold yellow in them, and a black ring around the iris too. Maybe I just saw someone with an odd eye color for their skin tone, and my brain made it more weird than it actually was. Maybe he was a normal dude with a really crazy eye condition. Or maybe he was a shape-shifting lizard, and my college was run by the Illuminati. When I lived in a small town in British Columbia, Canada, there was this couple that were very, very strange. We used to see them at the hot springs. First of all, their skin was green. Not a bright green, more olive, but definitely green. Not like any other person I'd ever seen in my life. They never spoke to each other or anyone else when they were there. They looked a lot alike, like brother and sister, although for some reason I always thought they were husband and wife. I think the strangest thing about them was that my husband, best friend, her husband and I all got baptized. It's a small community and it was in April. They allowed us to do the baptism in the hot pool. These people were there and you could just feel the malevolence coming from them. They were angry and left quickly. It was very strange. I'm not even sure I believe in reptilians, but if they're real, then these guys must have been that. Oh, and they had weird eyes, with no whites. In July of 2016, some friends, we'll call them Cole, Cody, Nick, and Josh, and I were walking home from a party around 3 a.m. We were going to Cole's house since he was house sitting for his grandma. Her house is also haunted, but we'll save that for another post. Anyway, we were walking from this party, which was about half a mile from Cole's place, and the road we had to walk on gets crazy dark at night. Now, some details on this road. There aren't any lights, and it just has this overall creepy vibe to it. This neighborhood butts up against a swampy area, so I don't know if it has anything to do with it. My friends and I have done investigations on this road, and we noticed that the swampy side of the road is always darker than the other side, and it gets eerily quiet. We always feel like there's something right along the tree line watching us, even though we can't see it. Getting back to our experience, we were walking back to Cole's house from this party, and Cole noticed this green ball of light fall from the sky into the swampy side of the street. Cole described it as a beach ball that had this green neon light emanating from it. He thought maybe it was a shooting star, but it didn't have any fallout or anything, and it just glided into the trees without making a sound. The weird thing is, the rest of us didn't see it. We brushed it off and kept walking. A few minutes later, we all heard this sound in the trees on the swampy side of the road. It sounded like something was rushing toward us, almost like a stampede, but once it reached the tree line and the fence, it stopped. We stopped and looked at each other because at that point, we were all a little spooked and didn't know what to do. As we started walking again, I happened to look into the trees, and I see this creature just standing there watching us. It looked like it was over 7 feet tall, lanky. It looked like it was covered in scales or some kind of rough skin, and had these yellowish eyes. I screamed, which of course made the guys look over, and they saw it too. The thing just kept staring at us, and it was super unnerving. We took off and didn't stop until we got to Cole's house. We shut all the blinds and locked everything up, and couldn't sleep the rest of the night. We still don't know what we saw, and we never saw it again after that. We tried chalking it up to us being slightly intoxicated and imagining things, because we did drink that night, but we only had a couple beers each. Plus, there's no way all 5 of us could have hallucinated the same thing. We're also pretty sure that homeless people live on the swampy side of the road, so maybe it was one of them messing with us. We all named the creature Lizard Man. We never walk down that road anymore, even if we're at Cole's house. We always make sure to drive now. I hung out with this girl for a couple of days, and then suddenly she got all drunk and excited one night, jumping around inches from my face, telling me that she could see the sun, and that the battle between good and bad is almost here, and that she wanted to go up because the good people go up, and the bad people go down. She told me that when the sun that's hiding behind our sun hits Earth, it's going to destroy half of the Earth and create a huge crater, and that's where the monsters are going to come from. She also said that the elite, rich and famous people already have huge underground bunkers to hide in. As she's saying all this, seriously, right in front of my fucking face, her eyes changed, and the shape and the color as well. It was like a fluorescent yellow-green. I was traumatized for a while after that night. I used to drive truck for several years. I drove everything from a cargo van to 18-wheeler. One time, I was sitting at the pilot on the east side of Houston, Texas. I had my brother out on the road with me at the time. I was there for a few days waiting for a loadout. Anyway, I was in this McDonald's there at the pilot. Just sat down with my brother and our order. There was this man sitting in another booth across from us. He was eating his burger really slow, like uncomfortably slow. He was wearing a black suit, white shirt, and sunglasses. He was watching this fly buzz around his booth. I promise you that I saw out of the corner of my eye a long thin tongue shoot out and snag that fucking fly right out of the air and pull it into his mouth. Without taking another bite of his burger, he started chewing like a madman. He had this huge smile on his face. He got up and left right after that. He threw his food away without eating any more after that. The burger with only a few bites taken out, and all of his fries and entire drink in the trash. He had this huge, almost satisfied smile all the way to his car. I still talk with my brother about that from time to time. If my brother wasn't there, he would have definitely thought I was crazy. I was on a 41-foot sailboat in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay with about 7 other men doing a shakedown test cruise. We planned to be out for about 12 hours. It was the mid-80s, not as reliable weather prediction resources. We got caught in a tropical storm, winds gusting into the 50-mile-per-hour range, just this short of a weak hurricane. We had just barely rigged storm hawsers and storm sails, because the one fellow on board who was the best sailor sensed the storm was almost on us. Otherwise, we would have died. During the storm itself, I expected to die at any time. In fact, we made a securite call on the radio. If you have time at sea, you know what I'm talking about. If not, it's not that important. For what seemed like 15 minutes, we were in a maelstrom. No visibility, but then it passed, and we would live. This was at about 3 p.m., and although there was cloud cover, of course, the ambient light was such that you could see 2 miles in any direction. If you're familiar with the sea, you know that such storms, particularly in shallower depths near land masses, dredge a lot of things up from the seafloor. We're all on deck, working lines, checking damage, etc. And the bay around us is choppy and churning and foaming. Old-timey sailors often use the saying, "the sea is confused." I look about 15 feet off the starboard side, and something swims to the surface, breaks the surface, looks at us, and then submerges again. It was like a thin man with humanoid shape. Arms articulated like a man, a human head, but its skin was covered in scales like a snake. It looked at us, blinked its weird, heavy-lidded eyes, and then dove back under. So maybe you need to know a few things about me at that moment. No drugs, no alcohol, no injuries. I was elated because I was glad to be alive, but my senses in that situation were sharpened, not dulled. I had, at that time, about 6 years' experience on ships and fishing boats, and had seen squid, octopi, flying fish, sharks, skates, etc., all around the world. I was not the type of guy to see a patch of seaweed and call it a sea monster. I made an instant decision that I was not going to say anything. What could I say? I just saw a strange creature, take my word for it? The men on this boat were all mechanics and engineers and professionals. Why get a reputation as a flake? At the time, it was important for each of us to get a D-skipper or OOD qualifications, and saying something like that would be frowned upon. And as I stood there in my life vest, soaking wet, hooking onto the steel lifeline, glad to be alive. One of the other sailors, a U.S. Navy captain with over 30 years' experience in the surface Navy, piped up and said, "I just saw a brown thing pop up on the surface. It looked like a lizard man with a scaly face. It blinked at us with these big eyes, and then it went back under." "Yeah, I saw it too," I said. No one else said they had seen it. Then we sailed back to the pier later that day, and didn't speak of it again.